Hi everyone, Shane R. Monroe here, and today I promised we're going to start our video series on the Asus ROG Ally, and I have the unit here. This is a production unit. I bought this at Best Buy, so this is the real deal, and it's fully upgraded with all the firmware patches and everything else. I have turned off all the LEDs, so if you're wondering why you're not seeing those on the front and the back, it's because I have them turned off. But today we're going to talk about the hardware, and I've got something verifying here, so I don't really want to turn the screen off. But let's go ahead and talk about not only what you see, but what it does, and any sort of tricks and tips that I've learned about it in the last 24, 36 hours. So as we talked about it, everything is pretty much at face value here, right? We have two forward-firing speakers. We're going to talk more about that in a minute. A very nice D-pad. Now, I haven't taken it out for a spin with something like Mortal Kombat or something like that, but I have a feeling it will do very, very well. Our standard 4 face buttons, 2 analogs. The analog sticks are what I would consider very, very loose. They're not broken loose, but there's like no tension in here whatsoever. I mean, it takes almost nothing to move these things. And for some people, that might be a treat, not necessarily for me. We also have your standard start and select buttons on the top, and then you have 2 extra buttons, one to bring up Armory Crate and one is your command menu, and we're going to talk more about that in a little bit. It looks like we have stereo microphones here at the top. That pretty much does it for the front. There's nothing on the bottom. Let's go to the back before we get to the top. So on the back, you have 2 what they call macro buttons. They're M1 and M2, and they're always backwards when you try to program them. Just remember that. So these are essentially rear paddles, and they're clicky, and there's only one per side. So unlike the Steam Deck that has 2, this only has 1 set, and they really don't. They don't really treat these like buttons. Like I said, they're called macro buttons, and I'll show you more about that in just a minute. 6-screw design to get into the back. There is an LED here that's turned off, and of course exhaust fans on the back. Okay, so on the top, we also have exhaust here at the top. We have our headphone jack. I haven't gotten a chance to test that yet, but I will. This is your micro SD card slot. This is basically your external GPU plug, along with your USB-C port for power, volume rocker, battery charging, power on, and then you have your power button / fingerprint reader. Now, the fingerprint reader, I've never gotten to work. I've actually trained it with my finger, but I was never able to actually get it to change to a fingerprint login. Since I'm now working with a local account on my Ally instead of a Microsoft account, the Windows Hello feature has been disabled. And Windows Hello is what lets you use your face or your fingerprint. It all ties it back to your Microsoft account. We have 2 reasonable bumpers. They actually feel okay. But notice how these things work here. You see how they pull apart in a very weird way, whereas once you're actually using them, so once you've pulled down on these guys, your travel distance back to the bumper is a lot. Now, some people play claw, like my son plays claw method, whatever they call that. But I'm your standard kind of guy. And so when you're triggering down, it's very difficult. I can't rock to the bumper, right? Playing Overwatch, you maybe hold this down and then rock to the bumper, and I can't do that here. And it's unfortunate. So with only having 1 set of rear paddles or rear buttons, I either get to put L3 and R3, they're click-ins on the sticks. I either get to move those back here or the bumpers back there. On the deck, I move them both to the rear, and I can't do that here. And that's unfortunate. The micro SD card slot, I will mention, it doesn't have a satisfying click to it. It makes me feel like if I use it a lot, it might wear out. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. Let's see here. So that's pretty much it for the basic physical characteristics of what you're going to see here. Let's talk about it from an ergonomic standpoint. Honestly, it is lighter than the venerable Steam Deck, but it's also less ergonomic. So let's take a look at these guys side by side. Let me move this monitor out of the way. There we go. So if you take a look at these guys, it's really easy to see the deck is a little bit wider, but not by a ton. You flip it over and you look at the width or the depth of it, it's not a lot. And then when you look at the back, what we have lost with the Ally here is we've lost these very nice rounded grips. So when you're holding this like this, I'll roll it over here, this is extremely comfortable. This is an extraordinarily comfortable design. And with this, we're moving off of the analog sticks, right? This is a very short throw for your thumb to go. And when you're here and you notice how I have like no distance here. Like, so I can push this all the way down and there's like no, I don't really have to move much of my other hand. I can just click. So now we look at the Ally from an ergonomic standpoint. It's a little bit lighter, but not as light as you would think it is. You look at it, I think the white makes you think that it's light, but it's not nearly as light as you think that it is in comparison. So you can hold both of these. And like, if you didn't know which one you were holding, you'd be hard pressed to tell which one was lighter. That's something to be said, right? So let's talk about some of the odd physical characteristics. So from an ergonomic standpoint, if I flip it over, I got some fingers holding down here, but this is not nearly as comfortable as the Steam Deck. And I will take that to the grave. The Steam Deck is a more comfortable device to hold, especially for long periods of play. You also have things like this, where you have to move your hand down in order to get comfortable on this analog stick, which means your trigger is harder to get to and your bumper is a lot harder to get to, right? Just to kind of compare, take a look. Very simple, right? And the thumb doesn't have far to go. I looked at this original design and said, you've lost your minds. I totally thought that Valve had lost their minds and this was going to be the most uncomfortable thing ever. Well, I was wrong. And this is somewhere between the Switch and the Steam Deck, probably favoring closer to the Switch. So if you got little tiny hands, maybe this will be better for you. But big monster hands, the prize goes to the Steam Deck. Okay, so a few other things that I wanted to comment on. I was hoping this thing would get done verifying. Let me just move that out of the way. So we do have the screen as a physical characteristic, so we're going to talk about that. But about these buttons. So they're close. Now, the machine that I had at the kiosk demo, I don't think the kiosk demo had the same buttons. I think it was a pre-production unit. I think these are the changed out buttons because there was reports of earlier buttons getting stuck. I think on the kiosk, it had the other buttons, which to me, in my opinion, were clickier than this. But now that I actually own one, I'd have to go back to the kiosk and find out. So these two buttons don't do anything. I mean, this is start and select. So they don't do really anything in what you would call desktop mode. So we do have the command button or the command center. As you can see, what that basically does is brings out your flyout. And there, we're going to cover the command center in great detail along with Armory Crate in a different video. But if you hold that down, you'll also get a Control-Alt-Delete. So that's pretty useful, all things considered. But now you're kind of wondering, like, why can't I go down to that? I actually have to reach over here and do something with that. I think that's kind of weird. You'll also notice that for some reason, I don't have a pointer right now. The pointer is very inconsistent. We're going to talk about that when we talk about the general software and UI of the unit. But there's plenty of things for you to look at and go, what were they thinking? Let's talk about the screen. The screen it's 1080p, and this is the mode that we're in right now. And if you take a look, things are small. What was that? Oh, Far Cry 6 is done, thank God. So things are small, but they're legible. And it's crisp enough of a screen where you can make everything out. People were really touting this screen as like a huge difference from the Steam Deck. And honestly, in a couple of ways it is, and in a couple of ways it is not. So obviously there's still bezel here, just as there's bezel here. The deck probably has a little bit more bezel. No, maybe not. Just different bezel. Less bezel on the sides. Maybe more bezel on the top and bottom. Now remember, this is 720p or 800p, right? You're thinking, oh boy, now it's basically a Steam Deck. No. Okay, so here we go. So now we have a little bit better of a look. So now you can kind of see the difference. Now listen, I've got these kind of dialed in so that they would be close together in terms of brightness, vibrancy, and all that other stuff. Both of them have options where you can make it a lot brighter, right? So you could go to your command console here and actually boost up the brightness and get a little bit more. You can do the same thing here. And it's got a decent little range of that. And you also have a volume control here, which is important. And I'm going to tell you, this is really unusual. This is something I didn't think would piss me off, but it does. The volume rocker. Right now, if I'm using the Steam Deck and I need to quickly, I'm waking up the wife or something, I can reach over here, boop, 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 and drop the volume down. I could do that without taking both hands off. Guess what? You're not getting to that volume rocker with one hand. I mean, you have to let go. You'll have to let go and get to it. I didn't think I would care, but I really do. So the best you've got is if you're playing, you can reach down here and adjust your volume through the command center. But I don't like where this is at. I really don't. And the more that I use it, the less that I like about that. So I thought that was sort of an interesting observation. Yes, the screen is an upgrade. It's not the upgrade, but it is an upgrade. So let me move this to the side. Let's talk about Steam Deck. More talk about the Ally. I was very pleased by the color. And there's tons of vibrancy modes and things like that you can poke through. So one of the things you can do is in your command center, and again, we're going to go through all of this, is you can toggle through various different types of gaming visuals: cinema, eye care, vivid, default. So you can quickly change. This is something that's actually a lot better than the Steam Deck. I like to be able to flip through different vibrancies depending on what I'm playing. And honestly, on the Steam Deck, you get nothing other than the vibrancy plugin on Decky Loader, which is essentially a hack. So it's very nice that they included that in here. So the screen is nice. I'm not ready to render a verdict on the touchscreen yet. What I need to do in order to test that, and we're going to have a whole emulation video, so we'll talk about it when we get to the emulation video, is how good is the touchscreen. Now you can get a taste. Let me buzz out of Steam here. You can get a taste by seeing how it drags around a window. And if you go into Armory Crate, if I remember right, I think you can see, no, it wasn't in here. Dang it, where was it? It was someplace that you could actually see your finger drawing, and I don't remember where it was. Sorry about that. But it was definitely something where it was following your finger, and it felt more accurate than the Steam Deck. Honestly, the Steam Deck's touch screen pretty much sucks. I'll say it. It kind of sucks. So I'm very excited to see what opportunities, right? Nintendo DS emulation for drawing pack picks or playing Kirby's Canvas Curse. I'm really looking forward to a better touchscreen, and I'm hoping that this is the case, but I don't have a final verdict for that just yet. The only thing we haven't really talked about from a physical characteristic is the power, which I have some definite things you need to know, and the speakers. The deck's got better sounding speakers, but these are louder and almost as good. They're almost as good, and that really makes me mental because they're so close. So let me launch Overwatch here. I know we can't really do it over a speaker, but let me crank this up for you. That's impressive. That's actually very, very impressive. It's loud. Listen, you're not going to get a ton of bass in here. I mean, it's going to be tinny sounding, but that's nice and loud. I'm totally happy with that. And the audio fidelity is not as good as the deck, but really, really close. So let me go ahead and get out of here. Okay, let's go ahead and crank this guy up. Fidelity, definitely better. Audio boost or output, not quite as loud. For sure. I mean, there's no two ways about it. It's easy to tell even if you can't tell on the video. Well, that's pretty much it. I mean, we've looked over everything. I've showed you the screen. I've showed you the buttons. We've talked about the looseness of the analog sticks. I don't love how these break apart here. That was the other one thing I wanted to talk about, is because when you're holding this down, it almost, it's not going to pinch you, but it doesn't, I don't care for that. I mean, it's probably just because I'm used to this, and there is a little gap here too, but it's just, it feels different to me. So most of the time I'm partially tapping down on the triggers versus holding them down, which is something, I mean, listen, it's new controls. You're just going to have to get used to them. All right, listen, I hope you enjoyed this. We're going to try to keep these short, these first couple of videos short before we really get into the meat. Hope you enjoyed looking at this. Please like, subscribe, hit the bell, get notifications of our future. Yes, I'm going to still be doing Steam Deck videos, don't worry, and Ally videos as they come out. I'm Shane R. Monroe. Thanks so much for watching, and take care.